Hey, Matt from Hidden Machine here again with another quick Roundup video where I'll be highlighting some games that I've been playing lately. First up, I want to mention something we got through Keymailer. It's an arcade-style racer called Outwave. This game contains pretty much all of the synthwave and sort of exaggerated 1980s visual tropes that you could imagine. It's got a lot of style. In the game, you have no brakes. Your car is just constantly moving forward, and you're being pursued by police the entire time. You have to do your best to outmaneuver them, and sometimes you can pull a move that will cause the cops to crash. As you drive around, you pick up cash that can be used to buy different vehicles that have different stats. And honestly, that's pretty much it. There's one course and one main objective, but the game only costs $1, so there's not too much to complain about. It's a very simple game, but it's got an addictive sort of quality to it that I think fans of arcade racers might really enjoy. Next up, I want to talk about two games that are somewhat similar. We've got Duck and Super 56, and we received review copies of both these games. You might remember Super 56 from my Steam Next Fest video, and if you haven't seen that, please check it out. I cover over 50 new games, and I think it's a lot of stuff that's likely to fall under the radar for a lot of people, so take a look. Anyway, both of these games are in the micro game type genre, with Duck taking cues from Bishi Bashi, and Super 56 being more in the mold of WarioWare. If you're unfamiliar with those games, they basically consist of a series of fast-paced microgames, sort of like a higher speed version of something like Mario Party. The main difference between Duck and Super 56 is that Duck will give you a brief tutorial before each game, and Super 56 just gives you an objective and you have to figure it out from there. Also, Super 56 is played entirely with one button, and that even extends to navigating the menus. Both games feature a wide variety of visual styles, and there's a lot of humor and general wackiness on display in each game. I'm having a lot of fun with both of these titles and would definitely recommend them. I'll be covering both of these games more in depth in a video about microgames in general, and that video will include some interviews with the developers, so keep an eye out for that one. Another game that I covered in my Next Fest demos video was Dust and Neon. Well, the full version of the game was recently released on PC and Switch, and I'm a few hours into the review copy that we received. The game is a top-down roguelite shooter, which should feel fairly familiar to fans of similar games. The defining factor here is the combat. It's really fast and fluid. You automatically go into cover whenever you're near any sort of coverage, and movement is super smooth. Reloading happens bullet by bullet, which adds a unique twist to the overall pacing, and amplifies the importance of being aware of all your surroundings. It could just be me, but it seems like the full game is notably more difficult than the demo was. I'm finding that I have to grind a lot more to get to a point where I can even defeat the first boss, but I'm enjoying the grind. There's a wide variety of pistols, shotguns, and rifles to find in every level, and you can either swap them out with your current weapons or sell them to get more cash to buy a wider variety of weapons and other upgrades. All of the weapons feel distinct and handled differently, and it's fun to explore the levels and seek out whatever loot and guns are available for you to find. The game really isn't breaking a ton of new ground with its presentation or mechanics, but it's fun and very well made, and I think it could be a good game for anyone who's a fan of roguelite shooters. Recently, I upgraded my PC. I went from a 1050 Ti to a 4070 Ti, and all the other specs went up as well, and honestly, the main motivation for the upgrade at this time was to get ready for Alan Wake 2. Last year, I started to find that a lot of new games were difficult for me to run, even at lower settings. As soon as I booted up this new machine, I got right into Control because it was a game I was really familiar with, so I played it with the ray tracing turned on and all the settings maxed out, and it was pretty cool. But I was also able to get into some other games that I couldn't run on my old PC, like Ghostwire Tokyo. I picked this game up when it launched around this time last year, but I just couldn't get it running smoothly on my old PC. I'm really enjoying it so far. It's got a unique flow to the combat, and traversing and exploring the open world is just a lot of fun. I feel like I didn't really hear much about this game after it launched. I think that some folks were maybe disappointed that it wasn't more of a straight-up survival horror game. It was developed by Tango Gameworks, the studio founded by Shinji Mikami, who had an important role in the development of games like The Evil Within, Resident Evil, Dino Crisis, and so many more. Mikami directed the first Resident Evil game, and I consider him to be one of the architects of the survival horror genre. Despite that, Tango Gameworks wasn't founded with a focus on survival horror in mind. While their first two releases, The Evil Within 1 and 2, do fall into the survival horror genre, Mikami wanted Tango Gameworks to be a place to develop and foster young game directors who could bring fresh, new ideas to the table. Ghostwire Tokyo definitely has a distinct feel, and the reviews I've read for the game seem to heap on equal amount of praise and criticism for different aspects of the game. I have a feeling that it's going to wind up being one of those hidden gem type games in the next 10 or 15 years. Tango Gameworks also recently released a game called Hi-Fi Rush, which is a rhythm-based action platformer. The game was both announced and released on the same day toward the end of January of this year, and I'm enjoying it so far. It's got a more old-school feel, harkening back to the early 2000s in a lot of ways, and the rhythm-based combat is designed in a manner that doesn't penalize players who struggle with rhythm. It's hard to fully articulate how it feels, but if you like video games in general, I think there's great potential for you to enjoy this one. This all leads me to the next game that I want to mention, which is the Chainsaw demo for the upcoming Resident Evil 4 remake. Shinji Mikami directed the original Resident Evil 4, and in doing so, helped to set a new precedence for third-person action games. There were a few minor examples of over-the-shoulder camera like this, but this was the first third-person action game to really hone in on that design and make it a standard for generations to come. Now, I'll be streaming the remake once it drops next week, but I also streamed the demo, and I've gotta say, I'm pretty much sold on the game. Resident Evil 4 is the game I've beaten more than any other game, and I've played it on pretty much every platform that it's been available on since it first launched. To be honest, I'm kinda sick of remakes, and I think that those energies should be put toward making older games run better on new hardware. Maybe with a few improvements or accessibility options added in. But that said, I'm still really pumped for the Resident Evil 4 remake. Alright, just a few more games I want to mention before we close out here. I recently restarted playing Blasphemous, which is a game that I covered back in my first Roundup video in April of 2021. I got about a third of the way through this game on my Xbox, but I'm in between homes at the moment and that console has been in storage, so I started it over on my PC, and it still rules. I love this game. It's got Metroidvania and Souls-like elements, and even though I'm not super into either of those genres, this game does it right for me. It feels and looks like a really good Super Nintendo game or maybe a PS1 era 2D game. I also started Guardians of the Galaxy, but after a few hours with the game, I really wasn't sold on it. I do like the overall presentation and attention to detail, but the gameplay felt restrictive to me in a way that's difficult to fully articulate. I am open to trying this game again, but I was playing it on Game Pass and it's no longer available there, so easy come, easy go. Lastly, I want to mention that I played through the latest demo for My Friendly Neighborhood, which is a first-person survival horror game that mixes Resident Evil 1 with PBS. There are these Sesame Street-inspired puppets wreaking havoc in a television studio, and while I know the whole mascot horror thing is a little played out, this game does manage to rise above those tropes to create its own niche. However, I did find the gameplay and mechanics to be a little bit awkward. You can't reload until you empty a magazine, and going to your inventory to heal or reload doesn't pause the game like it would in Resident Evil. I do appreciate the game's faithfulness to the pacing and mechanics of a lot of old classic survival horror games, but I went away from this one feeling kinda confused and frustrated. Still, it's got some great atmosphere, and I find the puppets to be hilarious.
The mail? The mail comes every day. I look out the window, waiting for the moment it appears. And then when it does, I rush outside to see what I got. Sometimes it's a little piece of paper. Sometimes it's big boxes. No matter what, I always open it immediately. My favorite new pair of socks? I got it in the mail. A letter from a dear old friend. I got it in the mail. An assortment of the best bugs the world has to offer? That's me! Junebug! Mashed skunk cabbage? In the mail. My neighbors stuffed into the box and shipped to my house? In the mail. The stockpile of greasy hamburgers that I cooked at my vacation home. Come on, say it with me. It came from Florida in the mail!
I've been keeping an eye on this game for a while, and I'll definitely continue to do so. And that's what I've been playing lately, but I want to ask you, what have you been playing lately? If you want to tell me, leave a comment down below or hop in the Discord. We're there chatting, talking about games, sometimes setting up co-op, live stream, multiplayer stuff, so get on down there. And if you really love the channel, please check out the Patreon, be sure to subscribe, like, all that stuff helps us out. And like I said, I'm kind of in between homes at the moment. There's a lot more Hidden Machine stuff kind of in the pipeline, waiting for one final push. I'll have a new shooting space and kind of home studio sometime in April, so be ready for a new wave of Hidden Machine stuff. But in the meantime, thanks for sticking with us and watching this video. Goodbye.